call this meeting to order. This is the 5th, is that correct?
Yes.
November 5th, Board of Zoning Appeal meeting. Judy, would you please take a roll call?
Yes. Donnell?
Here.
Perry?
Here.
Pfeiffer?
Here.
Jacobs?
Here.
And that leaves Dan Reyes sitting in as our alternate.
I'm here too.
Oh, God.
I mean,
I couldn't hear you. and
I
so
haven't
therefore-
collapsed yet, you know, I mean.
Dan's backup in case you do.
Yeah,
so.
good.
I'll review the agenda. I have a recommendation. I am the applicant for the first hearing tonight, and I would recommend or ask the board if they would consider putting me at the bottom and doing the other two first.
Yes.
All okay with that?
Let's do that.
All right.
But you still can't go home early.
Right, okay.
We have some minutes from the last meeting. Did everybody take a look at those? Does anybody have any comment or changes?
Were they in the, they were not in the printed packet?
Yeah.
They were?
Maybe yours is just out of order or something.
It might be buried in.
You got the whole thing. This should have been on the top.
You may have gotten a little, few less. And here's an entire packet, just in case you're missing anything. That's it.
I saw the three cases, but I didn't see the minutes. But okay. Well, that's yours.
Do I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Oh, who was the first on that? I-
He was faster.
Ellis
was, yes.
It's like we're trying out for like Jeopardy.
And you're abstaining, Ted?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and if you could pass those to Ellis to sign, right this very second, we're getting back to those signings. So you had chaired that meeting, Ellis?
Where do I sign it?
Very back.
All right, we'll start with 128 West College Street.
Have we approved the minutes?
Yes, we did.
Did we?
Well, we put it on the floor, we didn't approve.
I'm sorry. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
For some reason, there was just such a brouhaha. I thought I heard a general yesing. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
We just
My bad.
project.
Okay. Now, we will start our public hearings. The first one we'll do is number 2, 128 West North College Street. Tamara, you want to jump in, please?
This is an application for a variance for 802 South High Street. The applicant is Kat Johnson. Oh, no, I'm in the wrong one, I'm sorry.
No, no.
Yeah, we are in the wrong one. Why isn't mine in the right order? Sorry. I had that one. I don't know why yours is so much bigger than mine.
In theory, a duplicate.
I have to have it though.
Nancy and Malcolm, is that right?
128, okay, I got it.
You got
128
it?
north, there. Okay, let me start this. Nope, don't have it. I don't have it.
Would you like my copy? I have it.
Oh, s-
This is,
thanks. All right, so
You got it?
materials. All right, thank you. All right, this is a variance request for 128 West North College Street. The applicant is Nancy Kelly, and she's here today. The property owner is Malcolm E. and Nancy D. Kelly. And it's a request for a variance to a front yard setback requirement to allow a front door entry awning feature. This property is located within the RB, Moderate Density Residential District. Again, it's located at 128 West North College Street. It's lot 245 of the Yellow Spring subdivision and is 50 feet wide by 150 feet deep. It's located on the south side of West North College Street, just east of Phillips Street, and has additional access from a rear alley. In that zoning district, the yard setback requirements are that for a minimum of a front and rear yard setback distance of 20 feet and a minimum side yard distance of 5 feet, as long as there is a total side yard setback distance of 15 feet provided. According to the submitted site plan, which you all have in your packet, the existing 1.5-story principal structure is set back 5 feet 2 inches from the front lot line, 4 feet 2 inches from the east side lot line, and approximately 15 feet from the west side lot line, and approximately 93 feet from the rear lot line. As shown, the current front yard setback and the east side yard setback are less than the distance required by the current code. Therefore, the structure is identified as a non-conforming structure. With the front porch entry feature added to the house, the required 20 feet front yard setback would be reduced to 3 feet. Non-conforming structures are generally discouraged from being expanded in any way that increases the structure's nonconformity. In the current zoning code, there are 2 sections that provide relief for front yard setbacks. That would be sections 128204A1, which allows under specific circumstances expansions or additions to a nonconforming structure that extend along the same plane as the existing nonconforming setback. And then section 126002A, which allows an adjustment to the front yard setback distance based on the average of 2 existing front yard setbacks within a distance of 200 feet from the subject property. Neither of these options would provide enough relief for the applicant's proposal, so the applicant's requesting approval of a variance to zoning code section 124803B and table 124803A to allow 17 feet reduction of the front yard setback for an awning entry feature over the front door that will extend 2 feet 2 inches into the presently established 5 feet 2 inch front yard area. So, and then I give you some different criteria in the next section. From the zoning code, the minimum front yard, again, is 20 feet. The current front yard setback is shown on the site plan as 5 feet 2 inches, and the proposed front setback is 3 feet. The minimum side yard setback, again, is 5 feet and 15 total, and basically with the average front setback, you know, if there were 2 properties within 200 feet that were closer, then this property could split the difference, and that would not get her to the 3 feet for that entry feature. So that's why that one didn't work. And then we talk about non-conforming buildings and structures. And basically, in that section, it talks about no non-conforming building or structure may be enlarged or altered in a way that increases its nonconformity, except in cases in which the setback of a building or structure is nonconforming by 50% or less of the distance required by this code. And only in those cases may the nonconforming setback be extended along the same plane. And that, like I said earlier, that would not provide relief for this in this instance either, because she would like to actually have the entry feature to be in front of the existing plane of the principal structure. So then I gave you some definitions about lot lines and talking about setbacks and yards. And basically what happens is once a structure is built and established on a lot, then if you look at the definitions for yard, then the front yard becomes whatever the distance is from the front lot line to that to the plane of that, front plane of that building. So in this case, her front yard is established at 5 feet, 2 inches, and so what she's really asking for is a variance to that established yard to allow her to extend 2.2 extra feet into that area. So, our recommendations, and then there's the variance criteria, of course, but the staff recommendation is that the Board of Zoning Appeals consider this application, and if the decision is to approve the request, the board may want to limit the variance approval to only the area necessary for the entry feature. And based on the fact that the entry feature is not intended to be attached to the ground, making it more of a decorative than a structural type of feature, the staff has no concerns about that. Staff does feel that the applicant should be advised that all easements encumbering the property are the responsibility of the property owner, and placement of structures or decorations within an easement can result in removal by an easement holder if necessary for access. I'm not saying that there is an easement on that property, but a lot of times the utility companies take a 10-foot easement right along the front property line. I don't have any way to know that there's one there or not. A lot of the older plats that didn't necessarily happen. Sometimes the easements are in the back or on the side, but just so that the applicant knows that this would be, if it does get approved, it would be 3 feet from the front property line, and most utility easements are 5 or 10 feet wide. So, just as a caution, you might want to advise her of that. And that's all I have for that one.
Thank you very much. Before I open the public hearing, I want to bring it back to the table. I would like to discuss, it would be my opinion that that we're talking about something that doesn't really have structure, and therefore the setback, because it doesn't touch structure, doesn't apply. It's no different than an overhang of a building. And so if we address this as a building setback, then the overhang is not measurable. It's the building base that's measurable, or its foundation is measurable.
I want to second that to say that it's,
Well,
yes, go ahead.
I believe you had to measure the setbacks to any part of the structure, including the overhang.
Then we're in trouble.
Yeah, well,
Because we have not been interpreting it that way, or in any way, or even to the extent that if somebody provides an application, we're not looking at drawings that show the overhang distance, we're showing drawings that show the wall. On all of our applications tonight, we're talking about the face of the foundation.
We're talking, the footprint. We're not
Yeah.
talking about anything that, if I hang a 3-foot thick wreath on the outside of my house, that's not what we're, that doesn't seem to me that that's...
I take into consideration the overhangs when I'm reviewing a site plan, but I just want to look to be sure that I'm telling you correctly. So let me just check and see yards, the under yards.
I don't recall this being in our code, but I may just not have looked. It's more often connected with business districts where you have 0 front setbacks. There are different ways that second-story overhangs are weighted or above street level overhangs, or weighted or calculated.
I've never created a drawing that shows
It showed
my
the
setback to the
projections.
overhang, because I don't know where the overhang distance could end up, and I don't know if that includes the gutter. I don't know if it includes
Gutters.
any other thing, a bracket, or, at what point would that definition show up in the code? And having been part of the rewrite of the code, there was discussion regarding where we measured that setback.
You'd often find this referring to things like bay windows, signs, awnings, and such.
The
You know,
setback
but I
is
don't
measured
recall-
from the foundation.
In the definitions in the zoning code for setback, it's not real clear. It just says a required minimum horizontal distance between the line at which the building may be built and the related front, rear, and side property lines. And then under yard, though, for front yard, it says the space extending the full width of the lot between the nearest edge of a building and the front lot line.
If we're measuring this on the ground, then the nearest edge becomes the foundation line. It doesn't become an awning that sits, 12 feet over the door, it seems to
In
me.
terms of enforcement, I would challenge enforcement to determine how much something overhangs and measure it from the setback. If I have a 2.5-story building and my overhang extends into a setback line, I'm permitted to do that because the foundation is what that measurement is from. Now, if it were other than that, Stephen and I, having been part of the rewrite of the code, would have been all over that. I mean, we had discussion about it. So I don't know, as far as it reads right now, I know how you're interpreting it as in a gray area. But, in my mind, I think that every time I've looked at an application sitting here for 15 years, I've never looked at overhangs. I've always looked at the foundation.
Well, and I guess, so, and my concern is that, indeed, if we decide to hear this and grant this variance, then that in a sense creates a momentum that every time anybody wants to change the width of their gutters and therefore change the overhang business, we may find ourselves having to grant zoning variances, and I don't think we want to do that. I think if you're going to add a porch with something that changes the essential footprint on the ground, that line from the property, that measures, as I understood it, on the ground from the lot line to the building line, that's different. But this seems to me like this shouldn't be our business.
It's different in different communities, and your code is not real clear except for the front yard. And the front yard is very clear. It's to the nearest edge of the building. And I would interpret that, my interpretation is going to be to any portion of the building itself, not the gutter, but any portion of the building.
But why not?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Who says why not?
Because again, the problem
Gutters
is, right,
are an
that,
optional thing. I mean, they're not even, it's not a structural part of the building.
sure, they're
This
screwed into
isn't
the
a
side.
structural part of the
Yeah.
building either,
It's-
because the building is standing up.
But it is
regardless of the-
structurally integrated to the building.
Well, but then in that
And
sense,
it's
so are my
creating an
gutters.
overhang. The thing with overhangs, especially in a front yard area, is that in the future, if it's gotten an approval, okay, there's nothing that says the person cannot enclose that. Okay?
Well, she'd have to put.
From a
footers in.
bird's eye
Yeah.
view, well, no, she wouldn't. If she got an approval for a 3-foot, to have that variance, then, that anyone that has an overhang, or a lot of codes will say that in the front yard, you could have a covered, open-style covered porch to extend 10 feet into your front yard setback area. That's, a lot of codes are written that way. But that's not to be enclosed. Okay, but once you have a roof over something, then, and you've seen it a lot of times, people have a porch and then they enclose it.
But I
And
think,
they have
but
to
I think,
have a foundation.
right, Judy's point is well taken. If you're going to enclose a porch, there's got to be something on the ground that holds up the structure. And at that point, you've now changed the footprint of the building, and so I'm just thinking about Richard Zopf measuring these distances. He can't go 12 feet up and measure from the lot line in the air to this point here, right? He measures on the ground. And so, in fact, I mean, I just took it for granted that when we were talking about setbacks, we were talking about measuring to the foundation of the building or to whatever structure sticks out, so that's in the ground. So, right, if
There's
there's,
a cantilever, yeah, if there's a 2-foot cantilever of the building body that extends, then it's that structural frame, but not an overhang or an attachment. I mean, I just, and if, I agree with Stephen that if we don't come to consensus about what this means, then I think we're in trouble. I mean, like, even the next case, we have 1 foot 6 inches measurement to the side yard setback. That's what we're discussing, and that measurement is to the foundation. It's not measured to the overhang.
Well, can I raise a point that's reasonably in our agenda? it's, I believe it was a carport on Suncrest, that we did talk about overhangs, essentially. That there were 2 posts, but we were looking at a plane of a roof that covered a certain area and then was affecting setbacks. So I think if we're talking about being consistent, I'm not sure how we differentiate a carport from a covered porch.
But in the measurement of that carport, we were still talking about the support structure to the side yard setback and the overhang. Because that setback was so small, we had a discussion about the overhang maybe extending into the neighbor's property. But it never affected the terminology or the variance request in terms of distance. And that's why I keep bringing this up. We still have on record our measurements to the foundation. We are not measuring our variances based on overhangs. And so I don't know how to come.
I've always, when I do it, I look at the overhangs, okay? And that's how I interpret this, that when it says that the nearest edge of a building, it's not saying to the foundation. It's not saying to the, you know.
Can I ask you to just, you had read something in that definition about the edge of the building, something about the space extending, measure to the space extending. Do you remember what you'd read?
The space extending the full width of the lot between the nearest edge of a building and the front lot line. That becomes the front yard.
Oh, that is the front yard. I got it.
Do you have a definition, or is there a definition of building?
Of a building? I think there is in this one. Not positive, though. All right, building. Any structure attached to the ground which has a roof and walls or roof supports and is designed or intended for the enclosure, shelter, or protection of persons, animals, or property. This definition does not include mobile homes. And they also have building envelope, but that has to do with the building footprint. Let's see.
And then there's okay, so you have that definition,
Building.
the definition of building. I mean, I'm looking at this from just I mean, in that we don't have, my understanding is that we don't have a very clear history at this point of the zoning code and how it is that we have, you know, to this issue, what we have in the zoning code. So I'm just looking at it from, if I don't have that history, then I think, you know, I have to look at what I have before me
That's
from a
right.
strict constructionist standpoint.
Right.
And, I mean, I'm looking at, so you've given me the definition of building, I have the definition of structure, and then I have the definition of setback. And setback, I mean, it could be this simple. Setback, the definition of a setback is, quote, the required minimum horizontal distance between the building line and the related front, rear, and side property lines, unquote. Building. I mean, there's nothing in there about structure. It's building. And then my understanding, so we have structure, there's definition of structure, and then you look at awning, and awning, in the definition of an awning, it describes as a structure. So the awning is not a it's not within, as I understand it, the awning doesn't fall within the definition of building, a building, it falls within the structure, or the definition of a structure, and the setback doesn't, there is no reference in the definition of a setback to a structure. The structure. It is to the building. So in my opinion, I don't think we have to get, I mean, I think, to me, I agree, on the basis of what I have before me, I agree, I think what I understand your position, both your positions to be, I agree with that it's from the build, it's not from the awning, which is a structure, but rather it's, the measurement is from the building, not from the structure. That's where I'm at on this.
Ellis?
Well, is there any reason why, the term that gets used here is building line.
Right.
When you put
That's
those two
where you can
words
start
together, what do you
building.
get? Building line. Ted, you're an architect.
I measure from the building to me is what is a structural element that's a part of that structure. It holds,
Keeps the roof up.
it holds the space. So an attachment to that could be an awning over a window, it could be an overhang, it could be a bracket, it could be a flagpole, it could be any number of wreaths. It could be anything that is attached to that building that is non-structural, meaning that it doesn't run down to foundation, or if it's tied to that building face, it can be removed, in my mind, and not have any impact on the inhabitant. So I have always maintained that the building structure, the building itself, is where the setback is measured. And I've always interpreted it that way, going on 15 years. Never discussed overhangs if it has an impact on a variance, but never had legislation from us that states that the variance is granted to that overhang. It's always granted to the structure, to the foundation.
Well, and that reinforces my view of this, and that is if that's the precedent, I mean, that precedent reinforces, if that's how we've been interpreting this, in this board, before I was on the board, but, you know, during the time I'm on the board, or before I was on the board, if that's how it's been interpreted, I mean, that reinforces it. For me, that reinforces that this awning is not included within that definition of what a setback is.
And the reason that I'll even reinforce that based on, we haven't looked at our second application, but we have it as an example. And we have someone who did a field measurement of this condition and measured the wall, measured the foundation of the building for the purpose of this application, and he's asking for a variance to that face wall. I have no idea what the overhang is.
Right, that's why I brought up Richard Zopp, was because I think he's the one who did that. Oh, no, I guess he's the one who did that measurement, and he measured on the ground to the wall.
So if under this condition that we talk overhangs and use the overhangs as criteria to make our variance request, then we have to throw out the next page because there's insufficient information to make a determination. And we can go back, and I think that we open ourselves up as a board for real trouble on anybody that we didn't grant a variance for some other reason, because we didn't use that same criteria.
So, not to belabor this or prolong it,
Yeah.
but what's the intent of the front yard setback requirement?
To measure the face of, if it's a porch, it's the foundation of the porch.
But why do we have this thing called a front yard setback
For the
requirement?
same reason we have side yard and rear yard setbacks. I mean,
That is
it's to
to-
maintain a distance between structures and to be able to access those yards for reasons such as life safety, maintenance, some utility, mostly maintenance when it's closed.
Well, that would be the side setback, but
Yeah.
that wouldn't apply to, it could apply, but, well, no, would it apply to a front setback?
A front setback has
more
things like
aesthetic.
parking in it, like if you have a car in the front yard, you don't want your garage extending out to where somebody can park a car in front of the garage door and then block a sidewalk.
Okay.
So, you have a public right-of-way, and that right-of-way has to be free and clear to distance along that streetscape. So impediments within that view, within that frontscape, need to be set back for purposes of health. and
It's
safety.
more than aesthetic, when it
Yeah.
comes to, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that we not do violence to whatever the intent of the front yard setback is. But I don't think your interpretation does violence to it. I think it's compatible with what I think I understand the purpose of a front yard setback to be.
I'm a little, and it's not our purpose to create code, certainly, in these meetings, but I'm a little surprised at the notion that the code doesn't have 3 dimensions in it, in a sense. And maybe it's not so surprising in a small town in Ohio, but any city has, setback has altitude. It's just common sense. That, you avoid creating canyon streets by having 3 dimensions to this stuff.
And a
So
lot of
it's-
times that's written around putting a maximum distance on an overhang, and that's the way I've seen them. So, you have you're talking about setbacks, you're talking about building face, and then you have a maximum distance of overhangs.
Right.
As a note to that.
And that's been my experience in the past with other communities and their zoning codes. If the overhangs are allowed to extend, then they state it. They'll say that, up to, that anything up to 12 inches of the overhang can extend in the front yard. That would be Tip City, Ohio. Okay? And on the rear and the side yards, the overhangs don't apply. They go to the edge of the building. But in communities where that setback, the overhang can extend into it, then they give some language for that to allow a certain amount. Because you think about it, some buildings could have, 2.5-foot overhangs, some, have the 12-inch. But a lot of times you have these big overhangs. So you've gone through, you rewrote your zoning code, you reduced your side yards, and you reduced your front yards. Okay, so now you start thinking about, people building, right now, they aren't building with large overhangs because of the economy and the cost of materials, basically. And they don't use architects, they use engineers, so, but what happens when you have two homes with large overhangs side by side and small setbacks?
And
So
honestly, I don't
that's why
disagree with you on that. I seriously think that we need to have amendment to our code to clarify that situation.
That would be
But my
nice.
concern at this stage on this application and the next one
Mm-hmm.
is that I have always interpreted it from a certain distance place. And I feel like if we entertain this, then we are going to go into a territory that makes all the things that we've done questionable. And I have issue with that. So I don't know what,
Well, actually, on the next case, since you keep bringing the next case up, there was no dimension, or the first case that we skipped, there was no dimension given to that interior side lot line to the building.
well, that's another conversation.
Well, that's what you brought up about that, that's what you're bringing up, so, so it's like, that one isn't anything like this one.
No.
This one is a front yard setback.
Well-
Alls I can go by, okay, because I wasn't involved in the rewrite, and even if I had been, it wouldn't matter. The zoning administrator has to administer the zoning code.
Understood.
The zoning
I'm
code
not-
says to the nearest edge of a building, and the nearest edge, it doesn't say the nearest to the foundation. So my interpretation is going to be the nearest edge. And then however you guys want to work, it's fine. Or if somebody wants to appeal my decision, that's fine too.
Do you guys need a definition of edge?
Well,
I'm serious.
Well,
Is there one in here?
No, I mean, I
This is
think-
This is 3 feet. I mean, if you've got all the other definitions, it
I-
seems to me
I-
a definition of edge might be useful.
you know,
Only if it's in the code.
the permanent solution to this problem is to amend the zoning code to make it clear where we're doing our measurings for purposes of calculating the setbacks. Because I think honest people can disagree and read this in both directions. You see edge at this point, you and I see edge as building equals footprint, not second-story bay window. And since there seems to be ambiguity in that, the ultimate solution here clearly is to get that ambiguity sorted out.
Now, when you look at the diagram on yard, you'll notice that what they're showing for the footprint of the building is a roof plan.
Well, I wouldn't argue that, but
Well, but so I guess what I'm trying to push us to is, since we're not going to get that clarification this evening, what do we do with the case in front of us?
Exactly.
But see, I think it
This
is-
poor woman here is sitting here
I think
wishing
it's
she were...
clarified with this diagram. If you look at yard, you look at the diagram, it's not showing to the edge of the foundation. And
Can I connect maybe two things, if I might, which is a question Chris asked, and the interpretation Tamara's making. Chris, I think there is a difference in some substantial ways between a side yard and a front yard setback, and there's a civic element to a front yard setback. And I'm not sure how much this board feels that it's incorporated into the code, but it was part of the discussion that the civic and urban character was meant to be part of the purpose of this code. And one could take, I think quite easily, cover over a door as a principle of new urbanism, as a positive or as an improvement, if you were trying to make a case for a variance that violated this space but contributed urban character. So I don't know that this is a problematic case or a good one to test these definitions in that it has an easy solution either way, that it could go, potentially.
Well,
That's
yeah,
my
I mean, so,
interpretation, not necessarily-
right, and I should just be clear, I think there's no reason not to grant this variance, given what is before us. The only problem I see is that if we grant this variance, are we in a sense gonna force anybody who makes what I regard as pretty modest and changes to things to come before us? I mean, are we in a sense creating yet more steps for people to do what I think we would all agree they ought to be free to go ahead and do? I'm sorry?
Can I speak?
We really don't have the public hearing open, but, so just give me a second. I'm gonna get through this real quick.
Well,
And so what I would like to do very quickly is just ask this board if we want to proceed with this variance request with a footnote maybe that instructs the zoning administrator to clarify in the code through some other way what we measure setbacks from, and then move forward with an understanding of that.
Let approve this.
Oh, yeah, I
okay. I'm in
personally
favor
am
of
not
that.
gonna have a problem
Yeah.
approving this. I think it's a great add to the building. I just don't know
Right.
why she has to be here.
The approval would be of a variance, right? So they're,
Yes,
Yeah.
so you're bypassing the threshold issue here, that is whether or not she should be here for a variance, right?
Right, that's,
You're right.
exactly.
Which is
And that's
problematic for
so,
me.
Yes, yeah, for me too.
Right.
I mean, I just don't wanna set that up.
But
Why
if you
would I?
guys look at the drawing, it's kind of interesting to me that I don't think that awning extends much further than your roof line, which is right above it. And the measurement is clearly not from the roof line, it's from the foundation.
Where's this, I'm sorry?
Sure.
right. No, that's, so which drawing you're looking at the pictures? Where did my pictures go?
Unless there isn't a roof line. We have no roof lines there.
Yeah, there's a roof line there.
There's a roof overhang.
Which drawing?
How do I have this?
I don't have it.
Oh, here we go.
I think she's-
Sorry.
Is it a photograph or is it a?
It's this,
Oh, okay.
right? And so what you see is a roof overhang of, I don't know, 18 inches, I'm gonna guess?
So should we be
12
getting a
at the
variance
most,
for?
it's not 18.
Should we also grant a variance for the front overhang on the roof?
She's
To
not
make sure
coming here
that if
for
we
the,
grant this variance.
this is a non-conforming structure. I don't think we need to give a variance for what's already existing. It's just what she's proposing that you're supposed to be looking at.
Right, but right, and I don't mean to be a pain in the butt about it, but the request now, right, the distance that we're talking about is measured from the building line. It's not measured from the roof line. If it were measured from the roof line, we'd subtract, Tamara, you think 12, I'm thinking 15 inches from it because it should have been measured from the roof line. I mean, this is the problem, right? This is why, and I really don't want to gum this up any more than it is, but there's ambiguity here that clearly needs to be resolved.
I think, I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable declaring that we don't need to give a variance in this situation. And the reason is that it's possible that this sort of structure is actually distinguishable from the overhang of the roof line. When you look at it from the perspective of what's the intent of a front yard setback. I mean, usually when you have something that's ambiguous, you try to say, what's the intent of the law, and let's see if we can implement the intent of the law. And it would seem like the purpose of a front yard setback is to kind of keep stuff from crowding the sidewalk and people as they walk by, et cetera. I guess that's what it's for. And I'm sure there are some other technical purposes. And so I can imagine a situation where if you didn't have any limitation on this, and you just chose not to look at it, you could stick this thing out 8 feet, if you could figure out some structural way to make it do that, and now all of a sudden you're like, hovering over the sidewalk, and you have violated the intent of the front yard setback.
And I don't think that's the case. I don't think that you can structurally support an awning but for maybe 3 feet with a bracket, which is what she's doing here. You know, otherwise you're gonna have to go into the building, create structure that cantilevers, and then all of a sudden now you have a new building face
Posts in the
that's
ground.
structured.
Well,
Or
they-
you've gotta connect it to the ground.
Now, the awnings downtown extend more than 30 feet,
Mhm.
and
I
they're
mean,
not
if-
supported
if-
structurally
here's
on the
another
ground.
example to me. What if she came into this with an application to put in a bay window on the front of her house? Would she require a variance?
A second floor bay window.
That's how it is done elsewhere. I don't know. Everywhere else I've done zoning, that's how it's done. I
You'd
mean,
have to-
that's,
you would have to have
that's
a variance.
extending into your front yard. I mean, the building line is where, you know, the building line from that, you know, from, you have your front lot line, and you have your building line. And the building line back, you can build. And the building line front, you can't.
Well, Ted, you just had thrown out those two options. Is it, and I'm just asking you if it's feasible to say as a board that you don't wish to hear it because of a lack of clarity on the part of the zoning code, and that you request that that change be made? I mean, that, it sort of does the same thing as you hearing it and saying, yeah, but you gotta clarify this, except that it doesn't, you know, marry you to doing it again and again and again. If you just say, we're not even gonna listen to this because we don't have a clear definition of.
Well, I'm in such a quandary about it. I mean, I have a real clear understanding of what building means and what structure means, and I've practiced it for 30 years based on that criteria. And it's real difficult for me to leap into this and all of a sudden say that this is the way it's interpreted, and come to a compromise without setting a precedent that I'm gonna then have to justify later for some other interpretation on the next hearing, and know what to do. So I don't know what to do. I mean, I'm just really in a quandary. So I'll take any recommendations, folks.
How would you distinguish this structure from the overhang of the roof?
I wouldn't.
You can't distinguish it.
Well, I mean,
Not
so
as far
again,
as
I'm looking at this, right? And we're looking at measurements that go on the ground. What we're being shown here is a 62-inch distance from the lot line to the foundation of the house. And then therefore the 26-inch variance request is subtracted off of that 62, right? But that's not where the roof line is. The roof overhang is some distance X, 62 inches minus X, whatever X happens to be. 12 inches, now we're down to 50. 15 inches, now we're down to 47. So, I mean, that's...
So you're saying we have to be consistent if we're gonna.
Exactly.
These things, we gotta
That's,
include
I think, that's where the definitional problem lies, is where's the consistency? Because Tamara's point about if somebody wants to do a craftsman-style house with 3-foot overhangs, you know, bungalow style, then that becomes a different kind of problem, but that's not a problem we can solve tonight.
And here's another one, in just this, if Tamara's interpreting this from the face of the fascia of the overhang, or is she measuring that 26 inches from the outside face of the bracket that sticks out beyond that fascia? It could stick out another 3 inches. So if we give her a variance for the 26 inches and she builds it in the bracket, nose sticks out another 3 inches, are we gonna make her cut it off? Because, you know what I'm saying? I mean, at what point does something substantial become the point of measure in a building? That's the way I see it. And I take a lot of care in that when I'm designing, because if I have a cornice that may stick out, if in some cases I'm limited to that cornice, I push my building back. In the case of, I hate to say this publicly, but in the case of the hotel, I'm sorry, but I'm not moving it now, and I'm gonna have overhangs that extend into that front yard, so to speak, because everything that we measured has been in the ground. But what we're building is extending beyond that base.
So,
I'm pretty sure when I reviewed yours, I reviewed it to the edge of the overhangs. I will have to pull the file and check. I hope that you set it back
Nice
where we
job. Nice
approved
job.
it.
Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah,
But I don't know where you would have gotten those measurements, because they don't
from the
show up.
drawings that you gave
I don't
me.
have any of that stuff detailed on the hotel. I measure everything from my civil engineered plans, the architectural plans, to all the utility plans, the grading plans, everything that we have done on that is to the base of the foundation.
So,
Everything.
we got to, I want to suggest that we figure out the fastest, most efficient way to resolve
Right.
this problem, and I want to suggest this, that much as it makes me grind my molars, I think we should go ahead and approve this variance so that you can go and build your overhang and not get wet when you unlock your doors and it's raining, but that we do something that gets an amendment or some kind of small rewrite into the code as quickly as possible, so that we don't see this again. That this, because I do think that clarity here is going to save us a lot of grief down the road.
I'll second that.
But to do that, then the assumption is that it requires a variance, right? So,
Yep.
let me ask you this: if we were to say we don't, in our opinion, in the opinion of this board, this does not require a variance, what's the effect of that? What?
You're going to put me in a position where I would either have to approve or deny the application. If I deny the application, then she can appeal my decision to, is it to this
Us.
board?
We're the BZA, after all. We're the A of BZA.
Are you sure it's not the planning?
Exactly.
commission?
So this is what happens when Kafka becomes a planner.
Administrator?
You know, when you-
Here comes here.
When you go down that street, you'll find a number of structures like that. And,
What I do is,
I'm thinking we should-
I look, on the aerials for that the county provides.
Yeah.
And it's not 100% accurate as far as in relationship to the buildings and the lot lines. But what the county shows, of course, are rooftops.
No,
Oh, yeah.
oh, no.
Oh, on their GIS?
Yes, that
Yes.
is measured from the foundation, that is a building measurement. I would stake my life on it.
Oh, don't do that, Ted. The orthos are flown, okay, from an airplane, and they take a picture, and then that picture is laid with the layers of the subdivision, but those pictures are of roofs.
And then there is a supplementary document in that same GIS where it shows the building measurement. It shows.
Oh, no, that's in the auditor's point, yeah, and that's true, and that's
That's
actually
what-
what the
but-
applicant has shown on her site plan is from the auditor's record, and those are her measurements that I was using, going by those. But even if you take that overhang and say, okay, it's not, the 62 inches to the overhang, that's true, but what she's asking for is a variance for that over the eyebrow, the entry feature. And that is going to be 3 feet from the front lot line.
Right, it doesn't
Front
change
of
it from the front lot line, but
Right.
it changes
So-
the size of of the distance.
Nope, not at all. I mean, if she wants to put the front edge of that overhang porch awning at 3 feet from the front lot line, it's still a 17-foot variance.
Well, but
To the required setback, it's only a 2.2 or a 2-foot 2-inch variance to the required, or to the established front yard. But as far as the required setback, it's 17 feet.
So, well, obviously, we need to get this resolved, but it does seem like the cleanest way to do that and to send you home with
thought in the
the ability to
speak, by
do
the way.
something is for us to grant this variance tonight and try to get the village council to make the appropriate one. Because, I mean, you raise a good question. The whole 3D issue is a real issue in towns where I think people are more inclined to do that, and probably it does need to be thought about and addressed thoughtfully. So was there a motion? Did you make a motion?
Well,
Steve?
I didn't formally make a motion.
Well, let me open the public hearing.
Yeah, go
Could I
ahead.
say one more thing before we get that far? Okay, on this definition of structure, okay, at which you've agreed an awning, under the definition of awning, is a structure,
Yes.
right? Okay. So under structure, it talks about, anything constructed, erected, or placed which requires location on the ground or attachment to something having location on the ground, including but not limited to, and then it goes through a series of things. It doesn't say awning, but we've already established that that's a structure. Provided, however, that patios shall not be deemed structures if no part is above the ground and if it is located outside the minimum front, side, rear yard setback area. So,
That's a grade level
right,
hard surface.
right.
But then it continues on,
but-
right? And that's, fences, retaining walls, doesn't,
Right, but those, if still, the awning's is a structure, so an awning wouldn't be part of those things that are, that it doesn't apply to.
Okay,
It's-
we've heard enough. I will open the public hearing, so keep it short, Nancy.
Now that we've taken so much time.
50 minutes here.
Taking all the good time.
Okay, I am Nancy Kelly of the Nancy and Malcolm Kelly crowd. And I, as I listen to this, I'm fascinated and I feel for you.
I don't think anybody's ever said that to us, and thank you very much.
And what occurred to me listening to this was that the definition of structure wasn't clear, that this could be a structure. And interestingly enough, I thought there were two phases to this appeal or request, one being the awning, the second being putting a cement slab because we had to redo the foundation of this house. And we raised the floor, and now the front door is up higher. So we do need a step, so I thought it was 2 in 1. So I photographed the houses in the neighborhood. And because they had structures that were within the frontage allotment, and I thought, well, that was certainly a case. And every single one of them have a step at the edge of the public walkway, which is definitely in whatever you call that zone. And/or they have buried hand railings in that area. I don't know if those required variances or not, but they were structures, and they're there. So we would like to have a cement footer, and looking at my neighbors, heavens, a cement walkway with a step at the walkway to the house for a better entrance. So I just thought that was interesting that came up because it wasn't coming up in your discussion about the eyebrow. And if you pass this along, this is the eyebrow challenge. Most of the houses on the street have some sort of portico structure. This house was built in 1865. I doubt all the rules were in place at that point. And it's the ugliest duck on the street. And all we're trying to do, of course, is make it hospitable. So I think that I'm comfortable to do what's right for the village. If you want me to postpone this request and delay action on the front so we don't have a precedence of having to get a variance, I'm willing to do that. It is a house I'd like to have done by Christmas. It will be for rent if I don't bury myself in my budget troubles. But what works best for you all will be fine with me.
I don't think we should hold her up.
I agree. It wouldn't actually surprise me if you dug around far enough that there wasn't something over that door years ago.
Well, the second-story door leads to a question. There
Yeah.
must have been something there.
Yeah,
Well, they got as
exactly.
far as cutting the door in, and then they went for a permit, and they said you couldn't.
I remember that one.
So
That
it's
was
not-
back in '06, wasn't it?
The guy walked out the door, gave up.
Well, I've been around a long time, and there hasn't been one up there for 70 years.
Yeah,
So, I don't know.
So maybe that is what happened.
All right,
The stairs are
well,
gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll leave it in your capable hands, but I just want you to know that this is.
Yeah, no, this is very
Well, thank you,
helpful.
Nancy.
Nancy, thank you very much.
And,
is there anybody else that wants to chime in on this topic?
Oh, come
can't
on.
help you. Good luck to Peggy.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the table, unfortunately, you guys.
So I guess what I, sorry, go ahead, please, sir.
Well, I'm wondering if we can't go through the process of granting a variance and have a footnote on this variance application. That we are making an assumption that the zoning administrator's interpretation is correct. There's conflict on the board about what that interpretation is. We're taking that interpretation as face value for this application, but we ask that there be clarification to whatever zoning amendment we can make on the zoning thing, so that we're kind of covering our
Yeah.
behind.
So Ted, I like the intent of that. I'm going to suggest that we break that up into two motions,
Okay,
that we deal with the application that's in front of us with the footnote, that a second motion instructs whoever it needs to be instructed, and how it would be phrased, I'm not so sure, to get the clarification that is necessary. In fact, we could even suggest in this motion that we will not hear any more applications like this until that language has been clarified. I don't know if we're permitted to do that, but it's a thought. So, but I would like to just try to, sort of, one motion that's clean, let's deal with this in front of us. Second motion that tries to deal with the larger problem.
That sounds good.
So if I understand this, then this would be on a non-precedential basis, that we were, this variance.
yes.
And the measurement would be from the
Well, I
line
don't-
of the awning? Is that what we're doing here?
Well, see, that's
Non-precedential.
where I really, my logic breaks down when it comes to figuring out how to measure an overhang or an appendage. Because it's so relative. You know, you can pick out, for example, this is why, as an architect, this is why this is difficult. If we design a building, we may design a building without specifying how the cornice is necessarily gonna get built, you know, and in some cases, we may have internal gutters, that when we design it, maybe those internal gutters aren't fully designed for the capacity of the water, and we may want to choose to extend that cornice detail because of available materials, because of all kinds of things, you know, and so we don't want to be restricted to a few inches of something that somebody could come out and measure and look up, somehow measure up to where that overhang is from the lot line. I mean, you would need a surveyor to be able to measure half of the stuff on a building that extends beyond the face of the building. And I don't know how you do it.
What about buildings, and I've seen these buildings before, where you have, you know, your first floor, and then you have a cantilevered
The
second
cantilever
floor.
structure,
I mean, what you're saying is
no,
that
that
we
is always
can't.
measured to the face, that's the face of the building, because there's habitable space behind that overhang.
Mm-hmm.
That's the definition difference between a
And
building.
it's structurally connected to the bones of the rest of the building.
Mhm.
Ted, it sounds like you're trying to make a case for this classification of ornament being excluded from the calculation, which is, I mean, that could be
Well-
done in the code, or there could be some disambiguation of how ornament is attended to in the code that would help in this case. But-
Well,
but
ornament,
yeah.
you know, or, you know, I mean, there's other things in terms of overhangs, you know, is it, and I will say gutter, because what constitutes a built-in gutter versus an aluminum gutter versus one that's, could be a manufactured piece that looks just like a cornice that's applied? You know, at what point does that become the structure, so to speak? And it becomes this whole Pandora's box of interpretation. That's why at least I find that the newer codes are really written around the body, the face of the building, and not overhangs and appendages.
Well, the better codes actually define it and spell it out, and they say how many inches the overhang can extend into the yard area. Or they spell out that because they want to encourage people to have a front porch, they'll spell out that, that a front porch is allowed to extend up to 10 feet into a front yard setback.
And I
As long
don't
as
think
it's an
that
open
those
style porch.
clarifications are in this zoning code
No,
because it
it's
was.
not.
Because the technical review committee that helped draft this code made it clear that we didn't want it to be to overhangs, we wanted it to be to the building.
Anything they made clear has to end up in the code, or it can't be. That whoever becomes your zoning administrator in the future is going to be looking at, zoning is very black and white. It's whatever you've written,
Tim,
not what you
If
discussed.
this was an awning, what would your thoughts be?
Well, it is an awning.
So you're viewing it as an awning?
Right, and like the awning for, Dunphy Realty, that required a permit to do, because it's not non-structural, it's an awning, it's part of, they have to get a permit for it.
But then why did they get the permit and not come to BZA?
There's zero setbacks in the, it's allowed, they're in the central business district, they're allowed to have the awnings down there, the marquees and things like that, those are allowed.
Well, we've got a motion in front of us, do we not?
We do.
And I thought I heard it, both of them seconded by Kingsley.
I did.
So can I clarify
Yeah, 'cause
the
I'm
motion?
not
Okay,
clear.
so the motion is that we proceed to act on the request in front of us, and that in acting on the request in front of us, we note that there is some confusion and disagreement about the interpretation of the zoning code language which necessitates this request being in front of us in the first place.
Right.
And this is going in your motion for her request?
No, that's just so that we can move forward.
Oh, okay.
Which necessitates.
It necessitates this request being in front of the BZA in the first place. So, should we pass this motion, then we'll go through the catechism of.
So is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Second story deck.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye. I'm just a little slow.
Wait, you're opposing or you're?
I'm in favor of it. But we're not going to do the routine yet? Not yet. We're not ready for the routine.
Well, then now we can go into the
Okay.
routine.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Okay.
All right. In consideration of this variance request, we have to go through a list of criteria that make this kind of binding, so be patient with it, it just takes a little longer.
Now it gets theological.
Yeah.
We've moved into.
Number one, whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return, or whether there can be a beneficial use of the property without the variance.
Yes.
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 Whether the variance is substantial.
No.
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 Oh, you're just
Oh.
hanging out.
I'm hanging out for this one.
You can't
essentially
vote,
as the
actually, so-
Accessory.
You-
I'll only be active for the one case. where
Gotcha.
it's
Right.
step back.
Okay, cool.
So Ella, could you do it?
I was, I voted with the pack.
Just do what you're told, Ellis.
Number three, whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered, or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance.
No.
No.
No. Although, I think the neighborhood will be harmed by losing the door to nowhere, which I've really always enjoyed. It gives you so much to think about when you walk by it,
Number four, whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of governmental services such as water distribution, et cetera, et cetera.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Number five, whether the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restriction.
Abstain.
Abstain?
Abstain.
Question.
Oh, I have to, I agree.
So
I'll do as
yes.
Ellis, yeah, I abstain.
I'm voting yes on that. Everybody knows.
Well, how do I know?
what all
I mean,
the
how do I-
laws are.
That's right.
They
All-
just got passed.
All right, number 6, whether the property owner's predicament feasibly can be alleviated through some method other than a variance.
Nope.
No.
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 Whether the existing conditions from which a variance is being sought were self-created.
Nope.
No.
No.
Yep.
Whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by, boy, that's gonna be a good one.
Yes.
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 All right, the board shall determine after weighing the factors described above and any other factors the board deems relevant, whether the property owner has practical difficulties so inequitable as to justify granting a variance to the property owner. Judy, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. And you're all clear on the motion, we don't need to restate?
Well,
You've got-
right, the motion is to grant the variance.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Perry,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Pfeiffer,
Yes.
Danell,
Yes.
Khan.
Yes.
See, now, wasn't that easy?
Okay, so now, my idea, and I'm perfectly prepared to be shot down here, but my idea was now to offer a second motion, which either it instructs planning and/or the village council to clarify the language over which we've had such difficulties, to making it more explicit where we measure setbacks from and to, and/or a motion that says we will not hear similar requests until that language has been clarified.
I think what I would like to do with that myself is put that down on the agenda for after the other applications, because I think there's some relevance to those, to this thing.
Okay.
We
I'm cool
we
with
don't
that.
want to not hear the next one.
Well, I do have a question or questions. Do we have the authority to
I
instruct?
have no idea. I thought we'd
Do
do
we-
it and then see, we'll see what happens.
If we find that there is something in the code that we can't make a judgment for because it is unclear, then we have every authority to request clarification through.
But the request, not instruct, I mean, we can request it,
Oh,
but it's
well,
entirely,
that's
is
just
that?
Stephen talking and
That's what I understand. Well, and then, there's the other part to that, and, that we're not going to consider any
Well, that was just
petitions.
a thought maybe to create a
And
little
that's why I'm
urgency.
putting it off until the end, because I think that needs to be beat around a little bit.
That was it.
So do we have consensus then that we're going to put?
Yes,
this
go ahead.
on?
Yep.
I'm fine.
Okay, you're next.
We're warmed up now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my God. All right, this is a request for a variance for number 3, which is 802 South High Street, Cameron, please.
This is a variance request to a side yard setback requirement to allow an accessory detached garage to be replaced while still maintaining the current non-conforming side yard setback distance that exists with the current garage structure. This is for a property located at 802 South High Street. The applicant is Kat Johnson, and the property owner is also Kathleen Crable Johnson. Is that pronounced right? Johnson? Okay, and this property is located within the RB Moderate Density Residential District. It's part of the Fairview subdivision and consists, this specific property consists of 4 parcels. Lot 2, except for the west 25 feet. Lot 3, except for the west 25 feet. Lot 4, except for the west 25 feet. And Lot 5, except for the west 25 feet. All included on the deed recorded in volume 3505 on page 913. Each lot is 25 feet wide by 125 feet deep. This provides 100 feet of frontage on South High Street and 125 feet of frontage on West Center College Street. The property contains a single-family principal structure and a 1-car detached garage. The principal structure, which was built in 1925, appears to encumber 3 of the 4 lots, lots 3, 4, and 5, and the existing garage appears to be situated within Lot 5. The applicant submitted a site plan showing that the existing garage is located 1 foot 6 inches from the south side lot line. And I'm not sure if that was measured from the wall or from the overhang.
Don't even start with me.
The property owner would like to replace the old detached, non-conforming, single-car garage with a new, non-conforming, 2-car detached garage, maintaining the current 1 foot 6-inch side yard setback and the 27 feet 6-inch rear yard setback. The current zoning code identifies that detached accessory structures must be a minimum of 5 feet from the side lot line and a minimum of 10 feet from the rear lot line. The applicant is requesting a variance of 3 feet 6 inches to allow the new garage to be located 1 foot 6 inches from the south side lot line, and a variance of 5 feet from the north lot line of Lot 5, which is an interior lot line, to allow the north wall of the garage to be located 1 foot 6 inches from this interior side lot line, with a 4-foot section crossing over the interior side lot line. Okay. So basically on this, and then I give you some, some criteria there as far as minimums and things for that zoning district. Basically what's happening with multiple properties in the village is that a lot of these properties are made up of more than one parcel. And this happens all over the village. So what you have in a lot of places is you have a structure built over property lines. Unfortunately, your zoning code doesn't give any, leeway or any favoritism towards interior lot lines. It doesn't differentiate between an interior side lot line and a side lot line. And this is something that I'd like to bring up, with Planning Commission and talk to them about, and maybe changing this, providing something in the code for this, because it's happening more and more and more. The past administration, their guidance was that we should encourage replatting these lots, these parcels into one lot, and that we should not be just allowing people to build over top of the interior lot lines. This next, the new village management may have a different, opinion. I don't know. So, if you look on your there's a site plan included in there, but if you look at the lot line definitions, or even the definition of lot, it says a legally described and recorded parcel of land occupied or intended to be occupied by a principal building or group of buildings, and accessory buildings are utilized for a principal use and its accessory uses together with such yards, open spaces as are required by this code. And it talks about lot lines. And on side lot line, it just says the lot lines connecting the front and rear lot lines of an interior or corner lot, or connecting the front lot lines of a through lot. And so but I've looked all through the code, there's nothing in there that gives any, consideration to a non-functioning interior lot line. Sometimes the building's not built over the lot line. In the cases where the building is actually stretching across the lot lines, this seems, ridiculous to even come here for this. But again, zoning is all black and white, so it's what's in your code. So basically, let's see. So a side yard is an open space extending from the front yard to the rear yard between the nearest edge of a building. So I didn't need to read that, sorry. Okay, staff recommendation is that we recommend that you consider the application and determine whether this request would meet the intent of the zoning code.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to come back to the table again. I'm not sure, I'll bring this to the board because I'm not sure how to handle this. I am the applicant for the next hearing. The next hearing discussion is going to involve these interior lot lines specifically, and I'm going to pose arguments on behalf of my client that the deed and lot lines have some relevance to whether or not I need a variance for my building structure. I don't know if I should be sitting here or listening as a conflict. And would be happy to recuse myself and sit and argue from the other side of the table.
You know, it is a slight conflict, but you've mentioned it, number one. But, I mean, as long as you don't talk about your case specifically, I think it's important that you all discuss this, because it's, like I said, it's not just one or two or three. This is all over the village like this. And I've had many people replat their properties for this specifically same issue. The benefits of replatting it is that they get one tax bill. Right now, that, you know, they get multiple tax bills, because these are, each of these lots has a specific parcel ID number. So in this case, you know, well, in general cases, what can happen is somebody could decide to sell off portions of their property, and we need to be careful that we don't just overlook the side lot lines, because we could cause them to become non-conforming if they sell off parts of their lots. And I have one like that on Herman Street right now, where they have the structure going across lot lines, but he wants to divide off, you know, two of the parcels, and it's wide enough to create a legal lot, but he may have to take down part of his building or wiggle the line around it somehow. I mean, it is definitely an issue.
That's the tricky thing, if I'm following.
Well,
what
wait
you
a
said
minute, wait a minute. I've kind of got a motion on the table whether or not
Oh.
I need to be here.
Whether you stay.
Ted, with
Yeah.
regard to you recusing, I mean, given that it's a quasi-judicial process, it's a lot cleaner if you're not in this discussion. And if there is a discussion to change the code, it goes to Planning Commission.
That's true.
I would not be at the table, just as an overabundance of caution.
I would therefore choose to recuse myself. And Ellis, would you mind please chairing?
Sure, can I do it from here, or do people want me to move?
But you have to have the gavel.
I sat down. Thank you very much. Okay. So, Steve?
I guess the similarity I see now with the case we just discussed is that there's a large problematic issue here, which seems to me does not bear directly on the case in front of us. Because what we're looking at, as if I'm understanding all of this correctly, is changes only to what is labeled Lot 5. And Lot 5 can't be sold off separately, Lot 4 can't be sold off separately, so we aren't running the risk in considering this variance of creating a non-conforming situation in the future. If I'm looking at this correctly, really the only thing that could get sold off as the footprint currently exists is Lot 2, and we're well in our setback requirements there. The larger issue here is what do we do about all of these internal lot lines, and that's not our bailiwick, but it does seem to me it becomes our problem as these requests come in. So I'm going to suggest again that we treat this discreetly and then move in a second motion to have Planning Commission address this particular problem.
More discussion?
Well, that's, the broader thing intersects, I'm not sure which of these cases will capture it more clearly, but it intersects with at least two of these cases. And I think the logic of what Tamara was saying about the previous administration's determination, I think I can follow that. And basically what I would take that as is, if one picked a parcel of land or a plat of land or a piece of land with these buildings on it and tried to do the reverse process, it would be impossible. You couldn't take lots 2, 3, 4, and 5 with these houses on it as one lot and then suddenly say I'd like to subdivide it
Right.
in this way. The obligation would be that you'd have to demolish everything on it in order to have that subdivision approved. So it is there's a reason for that. that determination in not adding non-conforming baggage to the parcels that are, or not sort of validating non-conforming baggage with parcels that are modified. So I mean, I think I follow that, and I think this, what's proposed here modifies at least 2 of these, which are 4 and 5, not just 1.
Right, but I guess the point is if you're going to demolish everything on these 4 lots, you're going to demolish everything on these 4 lots.
But the simple remedy is to consolidate them.
Well, that's, basically the applicant has two options. They can replat this and, well, I take that back, not for the south property line. Okay, this is 2 issues
Yeah, the
here.
exterior.
This is the issue, the first issue is that they want to replace the garage.
Right.
They want to remove that other garage and it's a non-conforming structure. So if they remove it, then anything that they replace it with has to meet the zoning setback requirements of the current code, okay, without getting a variance. There is a process where if a person wants to replace a structure that's been destroyed and use the same footers, then there's a process to go through with this board to grant that. But what she's asking for is to use the same setback, and any enlargement of the non-conforming structure is it's not becoming more non-conforming, except because of the interior side lot line, and that's a different issue, though. So you have 2 issues, the variance to the south property line to allow the garage to be rebuilt in the same location on that south property line, and then the variance to the interior lot line on the
Right,
north
but I
side.
guess, okay. So item number 1, it simply preserves the nonconformity as it currently exists.
Yes.
Okay. And issue number 2 strikes me as a purely hypothetical problem, since the nonconformity it creates on an interior lot line on a property that's already occupied with a large house. Right? That's
Well,
so the only way this becomes a non-conforming problem on the north end is if the owner decides to sell off lot labeled number 4 as a separate lot, which means tearing down everything but the garage. The garage then becomes non-conforming to the new lot, to the...
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's never going to be a non-conformity on that north side.
On the north side, as things
It's-
currently stand.
Right, because and the other thing is, in this case, all 4 parcels are all on the same deed. What I would like to get to would be something in the code where I could just write the permit and then make a note on the permit to the effect that this property is made up of multiple lots. All lots are on the same deed. Any future, division of that deed or the lots would have to keep the structure in zoning compliance with today's code, basically.
So what prevents you from doing that now?
Your zoning code says, it talks about the side lot line, the front lot lines of each lot. It doesn't say anything about you can ignore the side lot line if all the lots are all on the same deed.
But it
It's
doesn't,
very-
it doesn't say it in the other direction either. It doesn't say you have to observe the interior lot lines. even
Yes,
if-
it does.
It
Your
does?
definitions, your definitions for lot lines, it's very clear that each lot has a front, a rear, and side lot lines. And her property has 4 lots. We have a definition of a lot, and then we have definition of lot lines.
Right, but the idea that these are all on the same deed would seem to me to create a single lot that doesn't quite fit the definitions as you
It
just read
creates a
them.
single property.
Yeah.
But it doesn't create a single lot.
So we're going to draw a distinction between a property and a lot.
Zoning is very black and white.
Well, no, but you keep saying that, though. I'm fascinated
literal.
that it's
It's just
getting
literal.
grayer and grayer.
Well, they could hypothetically do a separation of these parcels without going for a variance if they decided to.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, there's, and then there's other properties where they have one property, but they've got multiple lots. And, if they were, for instance, if this deck and stuff weren't on there, if they wanted to build that building right up against, if you took away the enclosed porch and the wood deck, and then they were coming in for a permit for that principal structure, and you can see it's only a couple of feet from that side lot line between 3 and 4, well, should I just overlook that and say, okay, since you own all 4 of those lots, but then what if they decide to sell off lot 2 and 3? Because that's 50 feet, it's a legally, it's a legal size, it meets the minimums for a lot in that zoning district. So then, if they sold those off, they would be causing themselves a non-conforming situation.
Can I ask you something really out there? Can she grant herself an easement?
Can she grant herself an easement?
We really are in theological waters now.
I mean, you should.
I mean, you just made this argument, and if she had a neighboring property and needed to extend close to the side of that neighboring property, and she could work out an easement, and she owns both those lots, so if she grants herself an easement, then
I suppose if you put a deed restriction on, and that is, the property on Herman Street, that is something I'm working with him about, because just to maintain the one structure, he's gonna have to have an easement, but in this case, I don't know. I don't know how that would solve it, getting an easement for it. It's a bigger issue than what the application's for. This application is for a garage. I have to look at that side lot line because it's there.
Well, I guess that's what right, so this really is precisely, we're back to our strict constructionists or our Oliver Wendell Holmesian pragmatists, right? Do you have to do only what the Constitution says you can do, or can you do things that the Constitution doesn't mention at all? And it seems to me that the fact that these 4 lots are on the same deed, in effect, creates the effect of minimizing the significance of those interior lot lines.
I agree, and that's why I would like it to be that when all the lots are on the same deed, then I could just issue the permit and put a little note there saying, stating that all these parcels are on the same deed.
What's involved in replatting?
They would have to hire a surveyor to come in
Yeah.
and draw the drawing onto a sheet of Mylar.
Yeah.
And then they would have to, get the signatures. It's an administratively handled thing as long as they're going from 4 lots to 1. The only time, as long as they're going from, creating less lots, it's just over at the desk. We just issue the permit.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
But they have to get a
Because
surveyor to give the
if this had been
the Mylar.
replatted into 1, or indeed into 2,
Right,
you could create lot number 2 and then lot numbers 3, 4, 5 into 1,
yes.
right? Then all of this problem goes away.
No, because she still has the south property line. Once she removes the old garage.
Right, but-
Your
but-
zoning code says that once it's removed destroyed by more than 50%,
Okay.
whether it by your own hand or an act of God, once you take down 50% of it, then you have to rebuild according to the setbacks of the current code.
Yeah, though we could argue, okay, but we're not increasing the nonconformity. We're simply preserving the nonconformity as it currently exists. That's what we established.
Right, and that's,
moment ago.
and that's, you do have that authority for, where a property owner wants to reuse the same footer. To
Right.
go ahead and to allow that nonconformity to continue. She's not gonna use the same footer, but you can use the same footer location.
Right.
So she's not increasing the nonconformity.
Okay, any other questions from the table before we open it up for the public hearing part of this thing? Okay, let's open the public hearing. Does the applicant want to be heard?
I really have nothing to add.
Oh, sure you do.
Please. I think you need to speak into the microphone. And
State
you
your
gotta
name.
Give us your name and your
Kat
address.
Johnston. I live at 802 South High Street. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have about my non-conforming structure.
Any questions?
Well, I guess, just to be a stickler about it, the proposed garage is 26 by 22, so I'm guessing that's 22 feet north and south, if I'm looking at the drawing correctly. So what's the current dimension? Is it 26 by 11 or 20?
Yeah, he didn't put the dimensions aren't on the.
Right, the dimensions aren't on the existing garage. I mean, again, I'm really not trying to be a pain. But the whole, you could make this argument that she's adding 50%, not more than 50%. That she's altering, she's not destroying more than 50%, right? She's simply
Except
extending.
that she's actually gonna take it all down.
Yeah, but right, see, it's,
Could use the language improve and repair.
what's that?
Improve and repair.
Yeah,
And, yeah,
Right.
just,
So I guess, have you considered replatting this, just out of curiosity, or is?
I did discuss that with a number of people,
Yeah.
and a number of people seemed to think that it wasn't really necessary.
Okay.
That if I cared to get one tax bill rather than 4 tax bills, then it might be worth it.
Right.
But they didn't seem to think that it would change this process at all.
Yeah.
So I didn't bother to do that.
Okay.
I'll just pay my 4 tax bills. But if it's something I need to do, I can do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, because, I mean, not yet. If I'm understanding all of this correctly, if you replatted, we reduce 2 problems to 1 problem. And then we're only adjudicating the 1 problem.
That's true, yes, but we still have this issue that's gonna have to be discussed with. the
Yeah, but
planning commission.
that's not
Yes.
Kat's
No, it's
problem,
not her
right? I mean,
problem, no.
that's,
No,
well, if I understood Tamara, what you were saying was a sort of de facto replatting, the note that you were talking about, wishing that you could attach. But if the intention is to continue to use this as a single-family house on this batch of property, in the long run, it could simplify your life to replat it. And if there are other modifications you wanted to make, you would avoid having these sorts of discussions again.
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
that's certainly
So in
true.
that sense, it's a kind of house cleaning that maybe serves you in the longer future. Although, the advice you got before about, if you don't need to, why do it? That makes a certain sort of sense for the shorter future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll probably go ahead and pursue that.
Tim,
You guys gonna let Ted talk?
No,
I'm trying to.
I think we should just let him, let him.
Oh, come on. What a guy.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we call on you, Ted, let me just ask him a quick question. Does the plan for the new garage, does it create any other problems in relationship to like village services or anything like that?
No. None that haven't already been created. I mean, I actually did not check to see if there's a utility line on the property line or not. But if it is there, it's already being interfered with. But I don't think there is. If I remember correctly, there's no utility
I
line
don't
here.
believe so.
I think
It
it's-
stops
yeah, I think
before it
so.
gets there, but there is one interior to that block
Yes.
earlier on.
Thanks. Okay, does anybody else desire to speak?
Should we take a 5-minute recess and let Ted really just?
All right, my name is Ted Donnell.
See if we should ice him.
Here is a pragmatic issue with replatting that section of town. And I have been involved with several people who have endeavored to do that. There isn't an established point until you get down to Xenia Avenue, and it's questionable if that lot. or if that-
Benchmark,
Yes, and so all of the lots, as they go down these West Center College streets, are skewed. So all of a sudden, we've created all of these issues where garages are on property lines, and the guy, the poor schmuck who wants to get his house replatted, is literally getting surveys for every house on the street, and it's costing him a bloody fortune, and it's taken him forever. And so that's why these guys aren't doing it. It's not, it's, my client, and the next one is more than willing to until he investigates it, and the surveyors are saying, I don't even know where to start, they're all so messed up.
So, does that mean that these interior lot lines that we're looking at on this plan are guesstimates?
They're off by something, yes, and some of them are skewed by meets and bounds, like they may go north a degree or something, or one may go north, the next one may not touch it, so you can't get the pins to match, and then you create a dispute between property owners on whose property is doing what. And so it's not as if it shouldn't be done, and I'm not saying that at all. I would love to have it replatted for that purpose of that one lot that I think is a lot, but it's the fact that they're literally having to pay to survey the whole street, and if there is any conflict, then they're the ones that are on the dime. That poor guy is on the dime to get it all straightened out, and that's not fair. So that's why these things aren't being replatted so easily, because it's an easy recording. I mean, you hire a surveyor, goes out, finds all the pins, he does a Mylar, goes down and gets it recorded, done. If it was that easy, all of them would be doing it. So that's problem one that I see. The other thing I'll say about the multiple lots, I'll say it again on the next one, but is that I think that there's a zoning administration interpretation that can be put off for the event that somebody tears down and wants to do something that would create more of an intent than what's already existing and established, which is a single family lot. So my client, for example, bought 5 lots. There's been a house on those 5 lots since the 20s. His intent was to buy it. He bought it as a single parcel. It's deeded as a single parcel, but it has separate plats for interior lot lines. He has no intentions of doing it. He's putting a lot of money into his house. So I think that in order to try to enforce the future change, is to just note that, like Tamara says, note something on the application that if in the event that this guy alters his property to create a lot, he's got to meet with conforming current code. Because the code may change 20 times in 50 years when somebody decides to tear down a $400,000 house to make a bunch of little houses. I don't know. So I think, from my side of it, I see this as it's almost like we're looking for something that we can say no to, as opposed to looking for something that's fairly easy to say, well, this fits the intent of the neighborhood, and why don't we just give that with a condition? Instead of driving me out at, this late in the evening to have to go through this every time, because we'll be here every month going through the same thing.
Okay, any further discussion?
Well, I'm having
Sorry,
some
are you
difficulty
closing the
understanding.
public hearing, Ellis?
Does anybody else want to comment? You stayed, maybe you want to weigh in on
It's
this
just an
one.
amazing procedure.
Is that what this is?
You choose to take that as a compliment.
It's like making sausage, but.
I know I'm sitting on a lot that measures 44 feet across, and I know it's supposed to be 50, but who's going to knock on the door of the lady next door and tell her you're taking down her shrubs? So, I know that lots of replotting is needed in this village.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Any other public comment? Okay. Please come forward and state your name.
Yes, Paul Abendroth, and I don't live in that neighborhood. I live on Rice Road. I own some property on Winter Street, and according to GIS, which is known to be a little off, the lot line doesn't line up with what everyone has always agreed was the lot. So I recommend, if you're going to address the measurements, that you retain the pins. They describe the property. You can say, this is the lat long of that pin, used to be referred to as such and such, and leave it at that, not try to move it back to a surveyor's work a century ago.
Well, no,
Go ahead.
No. You have to close it or.
Yeah,
or-
anything else? We'll close the public hearing and back to the table. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I just want to understand, I mean, what I'm understanding here is the issue is what could be, right? It's not the present, right? It's not, I don't think we have issues with, I mean, as to this interior line.
It's a
It
lot
is-
line, and your code says that there's a setback from that side
Right,
lot
from
line.
that, which it's not, in that it's a single family dwelling there, as I understand, it's less of an issue, or, it's an issue, I understand that, but because it's just, it's, you know, it's one, while it's 4 lots, it's one property, if you will, it's less of an issue at this point. But what I'm understanding, I think what we're talking about is what could be, right? Isn't that the issue? Is that, you know, what, if we do this, if we approve this variance, then what could come out of this, right? So there's this variance, and then these lots could be broken up. Is that what we're, you know, is that right? That there's the possibility you could break up the lots?
So, yeah, right.
So, okay, so let me,
That's when the nonconformity becomes activated, in a sense.
but to break up, if you do that, so, and my understanding is you would have to raise the structures, buildings, that are on there.
Stuff on the
Okay,
ground.
structure's right,
The
yeah.
buildings, you have to to do this, you would have to, if a property owner wanted to do that and break up these lots, right, you would have to raise the buildings that are on there, is that right?
No,
No, no,
not
if you wanted-
necessarily.
If it were one lot and you wanted to convert it into these forms, you wouldn't get the permission to replat it that way unless you did a demolition of what was it.
So the building that's on there, so we have lots 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the single-family dwelling, you could break off the lot number 2, right, from 3, 4, and 5, without raising the building, because the building, you know, how could you break
Well,
up the?
right.
Right, okay.
Right.
Okay,
But,
Right.
but you couldn't, because it wouldn't create a legal lot. The minimum width is 50 feet
Okay, so
in
you
this
couldn't-
zoning
Yeah, so-
district.
right, and that's where I'm going with it, okay, so, okay, you couldn't do that because,
They would have
according
to
to
take,
this-
they'd have to take 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and that would create 2 legal lots.
okay. And.
Bingo.
So, it would have to be.
So what you're saying is that that interior lot line
Is meaningless.
should not even apply.
Correct.
Because it can't be
It
divided
creates
off
a-
to create a legal lot, but.
Is that what you're
but-
saying, though?
but, I know where he's coming from.
I don't know where I'm going.
Why is she
so-
accusing me like that?
But a person could decide to take 25 feet off and sell it to the neighbor.
I'm sorry, which lot? You're saying 25 feet off of?
I'm just saying that you could choose, even though you can't create a legal lot, maybe of a legal width, you could
Right.
sell off lot 5 to the neighbor.
So then you would have, okay, so you'd have an issue with that line.
Well,
not the
yeah,
other
on
line.
this specific
But
one, I
this-
agree. It's not going to work with this one, if, you
Right.
know,
But however
because of
this-
the building is over the lines.
So,
How
right.
it works out, though, there's going to be at least 2 and 3 could be together, and 4 and 5 could be together, or it's not as if 5 is going to be.
So what you're basically.
5 would just be its own single lot, right?
So
And
what you're really getting at is that you would like me just to forget about interior lot lines if a structure is already going across that lot line and pretend that it doesn't exist and not measure it from there.
Well,
I think that's good.
I
What's wrong with
wonder,
that?
Tamara, the other thing that you mentioned was a hypothetical, if I could, sort of note that you'd like to build or attach to something like that. Is that something that could be tried or put
I
forward?
really think that we need to have, you know, some text
You-
Right.
You need
revisions
backup for that.
in the
So-
code
so, yeah.
saying that, you know, that when the interior lot lines don't apply for setback purposes if they're all on the same.
So let me rephrase what I started out with. It seems to me that the only real question, the definitive question we have to consider on this application is the south end of this property lot, and whether or not we grant a variance to allow this garage to be rebuilt in a non-conforming way, because that does seem more or less unambiguously to be a violation of the code as it's written. Whether it creates an additional nonconformity by butting up against lot line between 4 and 5 strikes me, at any rate, as a hypothetical problem, not germane to this case, but which does need to be addressed for future cases and is something that should be put on Planning Commission's agenda. No? No.
I can't issue this permit for this specific garage that is 1 foot 6 inches from the lot line, the side lot line between 4 and 5, without a variance.
It's 2 variances. Right,
Yes.
that's what's before the board.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
Could- Well, let me ask you this. Could you condition it on that variance, that is, the variance to the interior line, could you condition that, approval of that variance on that that 4 and 5 would not be broken apart at any point?
Well, you had some other language.
I don't know.
Tim,
I mean,
that sort of gets there, right?
Right. That if, the language you just used
Right, I'll
about
put that on
whether
the- yeah.
there's a building that
Yes,
already
I'm gonna put-
straddles the lot line, in a sense, it does make this other question moot, it seems to me.
What's that? I'm sorry, say that again.
So again, we're
Okay,
looking at this.
let's look at
And
that.
Tamara suggested that in a case where you've got a building that already straddles this interior lot line, the nonconformity that we are worried about as this existing garage doubles in size moving north,
Yes.
this becomes moot because this interior lot line has really effectively ceased to exist because there's already a house sitting on top of it.
In the
Right.
present.
In the present,
that-
yeah.
Right.
It's,
Can I ask one other question that maybe ties into this, and we're getting a little bit away from it, but a couple of comments came from the public hearing portion. And I wonder, I was just looking at the Greene County record, and it notes that there's a sale, 5/21/14. And also we have design drawings, and I'm wondering, a relevant question might be, has a professional survey been done, either as part of the closing for your sale or as part of the design process for your drawings that you've shared with us?
We had Richard Zoff come out and his measurements, there's a letter.
Yeah.
yeah, Richard did these drawings.
Is Richard a licensed surveyor? He's not.
Or he didn't draw
But
these.
for the
or-
bank, he would have
Hardman,
been.
Hardman, yeah,
Bill Hardman.
Bill Hardman, yeah.
I mean, essentially, a bank closing would want to confirm that your property was, that your house was not sitting on someone else's property. And if they were doing due diligence at closing, they would have done some sort of investigation from, no?
Anything happened at Clinton.
Because it's all on the same deed.
It was one deed.
Right, it's one deed, right? So again, I mean,
Yeah. Well, if you get one of these, if you get 2 of these property lines, you've got all of them, basically. 2 perpendicular property lines, then everything else goes from there. But I'm presuming the language of the deed bears this out. I mean, essentially, one of the misnomers with GIS, and people look at it and say it's wildly inaccurate, but it like all design drawings and record drawings, it says that, the graphic representation is not a legal record, it's actually the language in respect to coordinates and pinpoints and offsets and that sort of thing. And someone would have done, I would think, the due diligence to check that out.
Well, Richard did go out, he found the
He found
pins.
the pins.
And the
Pins.
drawing that you have here is from the Greene County Auditor site.
Yeah.
And this, it does
But
show
this
the
is-
garage,
yeah.
but those are layers, so we don't really hold, too much.
But the question was coming up with, how complicated is it to indeed replat? And there are probably some cases where it's indeed quite complicated because of of geometry and history, and some others that might be more clear cut. And I didn't know if this, which one, which category this fell into. And with the recent sale, it seemed like there might be some clarification.
Yeah, Richard was able to find one of the pins, or
Wasn't able
two?
to find two of them.
Two of the pins. So, once you have a pin,
Yeah, if
it
you have a
becomes
pin and a
an easy
compass.
way to, the surveyor, has something to go by. But it's still, it's a cost to do a replat. You have to hire, the surveyor to create the drawings, you have to record it. It's just the cost, it's the cost more than
But
anything.
your
that-
solution would be more elegant if there was language that permitted you to just, note the single use of the collection of lots in the
Yes.
approval process.
Yes.
Okay, let's see, we're going to have a motion here. Will there be a motion?
Well, there's two variances, right? So there would be
Right.
one motion for the one variance.
Or
So I-
can't we grant them on the
We can
same
do it at
motion?
Same time.
I think we can do it together.
No.
If we're comfortable doing it together.
I would like to move that we consider both variances.
I'll second that.
Okay. And Tamara, did you want to, did you suggested some language conditioning it based upon the idea that in the future it would have to, any future,
What I'm going to do is, anytime I issue a zoning permit on multiple parcels like this, they're still gonna have to get the variance because of the lot line and the fact that the way the code defines it, they don't give any exception, okay? But when I issue the zoning permit, I'm gonna put a statement on there that the property is made up of multiple lots, and that any future division of those lots would,
Or separation of
or any
them.
separation,
Yeah.
yeah. Then the structures have to stay in compliance. Because I
Okay.
don't want them running back here when they want to sell off part of their property to get a variance after, after the fact. I mean, because they would be creating their own hardship to sell off part of a property to a neighbor and then coming to you to get the variance for to stay in compliance.
okay, we've got a motion, we've got a second. Any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, let us proceed to consider the factors.
The catechism.
Yes, the 8-factor test. Are you ready? Whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return or beneficial use without the variance.
Yes.
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 Whether the variance is substantial.
No.
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 Whether the essential neighborhood of the character of the neighborhood will be substantially altered.
No.
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 No. Chris?
No. I had said no.
Okay.
Double no.
Whether the variance will adversely affect the delivery of governmental services.
I think we determined no on that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
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 Okay, whether the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restriction.
Abstaining.
Abstain.
No, you're gonna do.
Well, got-
Constructive knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You
I'm going
know.
to say yes.
I'm abstaining.
because-
I'll abstain.
Okay,
good.
I'm going to say yes.
Yes, it's a recent purchase, so the zoning code was enforced.
Okay. Whether the property owner's predicament can be feasibly obviated through some other method other than a variance.
Well, we haven't actually discussed whether that garage needs to stay where it is, and it could be moved to places elsewhere, but I'm going to say no.
No.
Yeah, well, I would answer yes. Because it could be moved. I mean, I don't. Yes. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yes.
Counselor?
I'll answer yes also. Yeah.
I think yes. We could ask for a definition of predicament, but.
Whether the, please don't, whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance. Steve?
Yes.
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 Did you miss?
7.
7.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Whether the conditions were self-created?
No.
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 No?
No.
Thanks, sorry about that. Okay, and then after weighing all these factors, whether the property owner has shown practical difficulties so inequitable as to justify granting the variance to the property owner. And Judy, I think this is where you take the roll call.
Well, I can't because the motion was just to consider both variances, so I do need a motion saying that you will.
I move to grant both variances.
I second it.
Thank you for keeping us honest.
Who was
I second
Chris.
it.
seconded? Okay. Now
Okay.
you're in line.
So has the property owner shown such practical difficulty so inequitable as to justify granting a variance?
Reyes,
Yes.
Pfeiffer,
Yes.
Parrot?
Yes.
Jacobs?
Yes.
Con.
Yes.
Holy heck, where are you going?
How easy is that? All right, we are moving on to application number 3. This is for 131 West Center College Street. I am the applicant for this application, and I will be recusing myself. Ellis, would you please?
I'll be glad to. All right. Tamara?
All right.
Is everybody good for staying at the table?
Let's
Does
get the
anybody need
right
a break?
one.
Could I get a drink of water?
A
Yeah.
little one.
Yeah, sure, all right. Okay, we are ready for the 131 West Center College application.
Send them the bill.
And Tamara,
Okay.
bring us home.
All right, this is a variance request to a side yard setback requirement to allow an addition to be added to the back of the principal structure for a property at 131 West Center College Street. This property is located in an RB, moderate density residential district. It's part of the Yellow Spring subdivision and consists of 4 parcels: the west half of Lot 247, Lot 250, the east half of Lot 251, and a 5 feet wide strip off the east side of the west half of Lot 251. And I have that denoted on the site plan that I included in the packet. All the lots are included on the deed recorded in volume 2728 on page 887. The combined property has a frontage width of 105 feet and a depth of 150 feet. The principal structure, built in 1940, appears to encumber the entire width of Lot 250 and extends across both interior side lot lines onto the east half of Lot 251 and the west half of Lot 247. The accessory detached garage encumbers the west half of Lot 247 and appears to extend across the side lot line onto Lot 250. Because the structures cannot comply with the yard setbacks required by the current zoning code for each lot, and since the zoning code does not make an exception for interior lot lines of properties under unified ownership, they are considered to be non-conforming structures. The property owners are constructing an addition onto the back side of their house. The addition would be located entirely on Lot 250, and while it would be set back approximately 36 feet from the perimeter side lot line, it appears that it would be approximately 2 feet from the interior side lot line shared with the east half of Lot 251. While this seems to be a non-issue, since the setback requirement can be satisfied if viewed from the perimeter side lot line, it is a technical issue that could increase the nonconformity if one or more of the parcels were sold to neighboring property owners or split off to create a separate building lot. Because this issue is not specifically addressed by the current zoning code, the property owners have 2 options for addressing this issue: a replat of the 4 parcels into one lot, or approval of a variance to the side yard setback. For this particular project, the owners have decided to pursue a variance. And then I give you some variance criteria. Basically, in this zoning district, the minimum lot area is 6,000 square feet. The current lot area is 15,750 square feet. The minimum lot width is 50 feet, And currently this lot is 105 feet wide. The minimum front setback is 20 feet. The minimum side setback is 5 feet minimum, 15 feet total. The current proposed side setbacks are approximately 2 feet. The west interior side lot line, and then 36 feet to the west perimeter side lot line. The minimum rear setback is 20 feet, and this structure's approximately 74 feet from the rear lot line. The coverage is, maximum lot coverage is 40%, and the structures on this lot are covering about 19.2%. And then I give you some other things as far as required yards or lots. It says that no lot or lots in common ownership and no yard, court, parking area, or other space shall be so divided, altered, or reduced as to make the area or space less than the minimum size required by this code. If already less than the minimum size required, the area or space shall not be further divided or reduced. So it does talk about that an owner cannot divide their property to make the lot itself be less than the area or the width. But it doesn't say anything in this code about, the person could divide it off and not meet the setbacks. But it does talk about, that's why I put that there. It talks about the, square footage of the lot and the lot width. Okay, and non-conforming buildings and structures. Where a lawful non-conforming building or structure exists at the effective date of the zoning code or amendment thereto that does not comply with the requirements of this code because of restrictions such as, and it goes on to say such as setbacks, the building or structure may continue to be occupied and used as long as it remains otherwise lawful. No non-conforming building or structure may be enlarged or altered in a way that increases its nonconformity, except in cases in which the setback of a building or structure is nonconforming by 50% or less of the distance required by this code. Only in these cases may the nonconforming setback be extended along the same plane as the existing nonconforming setback, and that, again, would not work for this one. Then I give you some definitions about the addition and the lot. And the lot lines, and we'll go into the variances again. So, the recommendation on this one is that the Board of Zoning Appeals consider this application and discuss how you all feel that interior side lot lines should be addressed, or how you feel they should be addressed. Based on the fact that all 4 parcels are included in the same deed, staff feels that an approval would not circumvent the intent of the zoning code or of the zoning district as long as the property owner understands that any transfer of any parcel to another party must provide the minimum side yard setback for the structure. Furthermore, when granting this or any variance, the board should carefully word the approval motion so that the variance is specific and identifies the actual area that the variance will apply to on the lot.
Okay, questions?
Well, or comments. Yeah, complaints, existential crises. This is exactly the same problem we just dealt with.
Yes.
Yes. In its broad contours. And it's certainly, I think this simply underscores Tamara's concern from 15 or 20 minutes ago that until the code clarifies how to handle interior lot lines, we're just going to, we could see a parade of these when it's not necessary for us to be seeing them, because my suspicion is going to be we're going to just keep approving these variances because it doesn't make sense not to approve them, given that, if I'm reading this plan correctly, an addition is being built to a building which already encroaches which is already straddling this lot line, and we're worried about encroachment on the lot line for this new addition? That sort of seems...
Well, I thought I agree with what you're saying about this being even a crisper example of the problem of getting tangled up in the lot lines. But the staff recommendation section, and I'm not sure exactly how to modify it verbatim, but I think Tamara has a very good, it seems to me, a very good sort of note to attach to an approval in this case. And the staff feels an approval would not circumvent the intent of the code, so long as the property owner understands any transfer of the parcel to another party must provide the minimum side yard setbacks for the structure. That's a pretty useful note to attach to any approval, and just not worry ourselves until this is ambiguity is cleared up in some more permanent way.
Yeah, so,
Sure intention.
Right, it is, and actually on this one, it actually has already been built. Hasn't it?
Even better. That changes.
What happened was, and through discussions with this and everything, I guess they were in a really big hurry. They had the concrete guys all settled and ready to come in, and I told them no, they had to get a variance, so they went to the village manager and got her to approve this contingent upon final approval by BZA on October 8th. So we've already violated that. Construction may start with understanding that denial by BZA will necessitate removal of any new construction.
oh, sweet. So now we finally, we could really exercise, we could make some mischief here. I mean, we really could have some sport.
So why don't we hear from the applicant?
Now.
Yeah.
With that segue.
Well, I'm sorry, before you open the public, so I just want to reiterate again, it seems to me we're in the same position. We got something in front of us which is literally a done deal, but we have this larger problem which we cannot address on the back of this particular application, and so we need to address this larger issue in a separate way.
Yes.
Right. Let's open the public hearing. State your name.
My name is Ted Donnell. I am acting on behalf of the owner, Mary Fisher and Trent Fisher. In your packet, you actually have a copy of the deed survey. And that deed survey does not distinguish any, it establishes the property. And the owner bought the house on the property, which is literally the footprint that's here.
Ted, you're talking about this?
No.
No.
No, the one that still
Got the
says
stamp.
lot 251, 250, and 247.
Oh.
You're missing your 5 feet.
Yeah.
There's another 5 feet that go
Right.
with this property, and it's on the same deed, and I'm not sure why it's not on either of the site plans.
I just use this when we do. But regardless, the intent of the owner is to never subdivide this. He's putting a lot of money into the property in order to enhance this particular lot as a lot. And, the issue about the replat was very problematic for him because he did contact the surveyor. The surveyor said that he had a hard time establishing pins, that it was gonna cost this client a lot of money to go down the street and establish the pins all the way to Xenia Avenue. And my client said, well, I don't even know why I have to do this. I'm not doing anything outside of the zoning ordinance, not understanding this internal lot line thing, and so he chose to go ahead, and I advised him that, look, if we do go ahead, and this board says, no, we gotta tear down this addition, and we decided to take the risk because it was snowing, it's getting to be that kind of time of year. So, I think, from my own perspective, I think that when the lot is established by deed as a single property, and there's a future event that no one can predict, it's difficult for me to understand how we as a board could literally interpret some kind of future plan that will, and have constraints based on that. What if he decides to do it into condos? He's got to get a variance. He's got to do all these things in order to want to subdivide this, and then he's got to come back and do a process. And at that point, if he alters what the intent is, then that's the time to deal with the nonconformity, not when it complies to the intent of the law.
Any questions for Ted? Any other members of the public want to speak? All right, Amy, do we have a motion?
Should we make I guess I could make the motion to
Make the
approve
motion.
this with the added language that our zoning code official has suggested.
Can I ask one question, and it's for this, and if this is going to continue to be an issue, then I'd like to understand this on a going forward basis. So the one thing Ted did bring up is, as I understand it, if you were to subdivide this at some point, if we've got 3 parcels at this point, right?
4.
4.
They only show 3 on their site plan.
Oh, okay, the 5 feet.
5 feet is still part of their,
Okay.
and it's on the deed, so it's, yeah.
If we approve, so I understand this, if you approve the variance on the basis of what we have in the present, right, at this point in time, and then they were to, at some point, subdivide this or do whatever to where there aren't these 4 lots as they are at this point in time, right? Then whoever that property owner is would have to come back for a variance, or would that I'm trying to understand that. Would the variance run with the property? That was what I was
The
bringing up before. I'm
variance
trying to
is-
wrap my mind around that.
Yeah.
Would it run with the property, or in that you're changing the state of this? Do they have to then come back? Does it at that point is the variance moot, if you will, that we approve and they have to come back for a variance? I just want to understand that. I want to understand the effect of me voting
Okay,
yes for a
variance
variance.
runs forever with the land.
Okay, that was my understanding.
So that's why it's very important when you make a motion for a variance, that you're careful not to just say, okay, we'll give a 5-foot variance to the side lot line, because then it doesn't just apply to that small area where they want to bring the addition out. It applies to the whole length of the lot
Okay.
line. And
But
so-
there are, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So that's why,
But there are restrictions then, with that in mind, there are restrictions, right, on how much subdividing can go on, like you have to be so many square feet per lot, 6,000 square feet per lot.
yes.
I think it's, what is it, how many, it has
Yes.
to be no less than,
Well, it has to have a
50 feet
lot
wide.
width and a lot area. You have to meet your lot width and your lot area. So if they wanted to tear down this porch on the west side of their house, then you can see that lot line would be, the house itself would probably be pretty much on the lot line, right?
yeah.
So if they decided to sell off that 30 feet, it would really be 35, because there's another 5 feet, or no, that 30 feet, that must already have it built in. Isn't it 25? And anyway, if you were to sell off that 30 feet to the neighbor,
yes.
now you've created no setbacks from that lot line between 250 and 251 for the house.
But that variance has been, there's an issue as to the house at that point, but
That's
as
right.
to this addition, that variance, if the variance is approved, that variance would continue to exist
Yes,
in relationship to that new perimeter lot line.
yes,
Perimeter line.
yes.
Okay.
So they'd have to tear down the house, but not the addition.
Well, not necessarily. They would, if they were going to do something like that, see, that's what I was trying to avoid. If they decided to sell off that 30 feet, which is labeled on here as lot 251, okay? Then, and they had already removed the porch or whatever, Now, they're creating a situation where they no longer meet a setback,
Okay,
okay, for the house. So,
that's right, so that's.
but would they come back to you? Would they say, oh, yeah, I'm going to sell this 30 feet off? Oh, yeah, I'll have to go back to get a new variance. They're just going to, no one's going to come back in for the variance for the house.
Hence the idea of the sticker.
Yeah. Except that if it becomes a subdivision, then it would, of course, come through.
I guess, I'm just, I'll let you finish that maybe, but with putting a motion out there, I suppose the thing that properly one does if adding this language is to ask the applicant if they would accept the addition of that language to the approval. Is that correct? Or- Because that's not This
I'm gonna-
isn't something they've proposed, this is something that you've recommended to us.
This is something I'm going to put on the applications when there's multiple lots and they're all in the same deed.
So that there's at least an understanding or acknowledgement from the applicant that that's part of the.
So that they know in the
Yeah.
future if it ever were to come
Don't
down
say,
to
well,
that.
yeah, not that that's going to happen, but yeah, avoid the different bunch of people behind the table wondering where this came from, some future date.
I mean, here the application is for this particular addition, and so I think all we need is really a proposal to grant the variance
For this
for
particular
this,
addition.
the addition as reflected in
Right.
the
Site
materials
plan, yeah.
provided with it.
Right. Yada, yada.
Anybody want to make that motion?
I thought Dan just did.
Yeah,
Is that
I
your
did
motion?
have
I'll
one
second.
with it, yeah.
Okay. Is there a second? Steve, second?
Second.
Okay, we're ready to, Judy, we happy with the motion?
Okay.
So, no, first we gotta do the rigmarole. Are you ready?
I got a couple sheets left.
Okay. Do we think the property will yield a reasonable return or beneficial use without the variance?
Yes.
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 Yes,
Variance substantial?
No.
Yes.
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 Okay.
No.
Is substantial?
Oh, no.
No?
no,
Okay. Essential character of the neighborhood altered?
Nope.
No.
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 no,
Adversely affect the delivery of governmental services?
Nope.
No.
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 no,
Purchase the property with knowledge?
Abstain.
See.
Actually, you know what? Can I change my vote? No.
It's getting bold.
And cranky.
This one I'm gonna go with yes. Constructive knowledge.
Yes.
Can I ask a question about?
No, you can't. Just yes or no, Dan. Just yes or no.
It bears on my answering yes or no with some honesty, but did anything about this change between the previous code and the new code?
I don't know. They'll,
I'll abstain.
yeah, I'm not sure that.
Is it just goes back always?
I've got the other code with me. I can look.
Where the property-
Ellis, what was your vote on that?
I always vote yes. 6, whether the property owner's predicament feasibly can be obviated through some method other than a variance. Those are some good words.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
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 No.
Okay. Whether the conditions from which a variance is being sought were self-created?
No.
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 Whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance?
I'm sorry.
Whether the spirit and intent...
Would be
behind
observed.
the-
Yes. Sorry.
Yes, spirit and intent.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, and shall the board, the board, how do you state this here? Okay, blah, 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 blah. Has the property owner shown practical difficulty so inequitable as to justify granting a variance to the property owner?
Yes.
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 We now pronounce you.
And that's the roll call bit.
Okay, so
But then she has to do the,
Okay, so motion to approve. Perry,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Reyes,
Yes.
Seifert,
yes.
Hahn.
yes. Sorry.
Very good.
Done that
Okay.
already.
We have it is almost 9:30. We can bring up the discussion regarding what we measure setbacks from, like we talked earlier, and make a recommendation, motion, order, demand to the zoning administrator and maybe planning commission to address, or we can put this off to the next meeting.
Well, it seems to be two, right? Two possibles. We got one to deal with where we measure the setbacks from, and two, what do we do about interior lot lines that are sitting on the same deed, yada, yada. And though it is 9:25, and I'm not prepared to teach my classes tomorrow morning just yet, it seems to me we would be better off doing this now than putting this off till the next meeting.
I agree, we're thinking about it now, but
Well,
let's try to do it quickly.
I
Yeah,
wonder
let's-
is
let's
the,
do.
is the action with both of these things, both of these items, ultimately a recommendation to planning and council to consider adopting some language or provisions that would remove the ambiguities that we've struggled with?
I think the one regarding the lot lines, I think Tamara's qualification statement at the end of the application and asking, and even establishing to make a recommendation to the applicant to please try to replat these, that it would take a lot of that risk that they're agreeing to, that she put in a qualification statement right on the table with the owner. That encourages them to go ahead and replat it, and we don't have to sit and listen to all these. I mean, I just think that's where it should be, personally. I think that it's not nuclear science, it's obvious when there could be a conflict, and, you know, that's why we have a hired gun. You know, that's my own sense of it.
So am I understanding you that you're saying, don't bring the issue to BZA, simply include on the permit that statement? Okay.
As long as all the lots are all on the same deed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big qualifying statement for me when
Yes.
I looked at
Yeah.
my client's deed, was that it was all in one deed, you know, so I just thought it was a lot, regardless
Okay.
of the fact that it had an old plat.
Okay.
So is that a motion?
Well, that was discussion point. If somebody wants to motion that, that'd be great.
What would be the motion?
Yeah, I
Would it
don't think
be-
you can,
It's, again, what's
Well,
our
again-
authority here? What
you
would
don't
be-
Right,
have,
that's
you
what
don't
I'm-
have an application, so you're not making a motion
I
for.
think the most we can do is request that they something or other, and it really ends up being a letter, doesn't it?
Well, or it, you know, she can put a qualification statement on the application. I mean, or letter. I mean, it's just the
But if
qualifying.
it's not stipulated in the code, are we empowered to request that of you? I think that's your question, Chris, right?
Right, that's right. I think that's beyond our authority. I mean, our authority is to consider the petitions or the
Right.
applications that come before the board, but beyond that,
So it doesn't come here, then.
yeah, I mean, we can only, you know, I think we can, like, you know, it's been said here, and maybe it has to be said in a different way, but we would like not, you know, for all these applications that come to the board, can we do something, for example, this, to where they don't all come to the board? I think that's the limits of the authority of this board.
I mean, I don't disagree with that.
So specifically, what do you suggest? We have two issues here. We have the.
Yeah, I mean, as to,
and the
we were
lot.
talking about the issue, the interior line issue,
Right.
if you will, right? So I think it's just a matter of, however you do that is,
So
what this board's requesting that the village, whoever in their capacity on behalf of the village, you know, encourages applicants before they come to this board for a variance that they consider replatting property that is on one deed. I mean, I guess it has to be on the one deed, right? But consider replatting that property.
They can.
They can
with the-
replat even if it's on separate
Yeah.
deeds. They
Oh,
can,
okay,
they can
okay.
replat it into one. It's just that, you know, when it's all on one deed, I think for them to separate the parcels and sell them off, I think they almost have to go through a subdivision process, but I'm not sure about that.
Well, they would have to get each particular lot would have to have its own record and deed. So they have to literally go through a process of recording.
Right,
each
right, and I
separate
think that when it
parcel.
gets up to Greene County, then they would require zoning approval to do that.
Yes, that is correct.
So, but when they're on separate deeds,
Right.
it's even, you know, more crucial because they could sell, there would be no requirement uptown that, I mean, if they sold off a parcel and it was on a separate deed, nobody would know.
Understand? Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's really a difference, you know, to me, it's certainly a difference, because you could have a guy who, let's say they build a house and they have a garage on a separate parcel, and they wanted to subdivide that garage, make it a house. They can do that with our new zoning code because of the no minimum on size of structure.
That's true.
So that, I see that as being a whole
But they can't get a permit to build an accessory structure on that separate lot if there's no principal structure.
It becomes a principal structure. They would make by
If it was
replatting
existing.
it,
Mhm.
or by.
Well, see, I run into this when people come in, they have multiple lots like we've just looked at, and somebody says, well, I want to put an accessory structure over here on this lot. Well, their principal structure is over here. Well, I can't give them a permit for that accessory structure on that separate lot because you can't, it's not accessory to a principal structure.
Right, unless the whole property is deeded as a
And-
single property.
Okay,
That's the way I see it.
and so,
All right, so what do we need to do here?
I think
That's-
I mean, I don't know that that's something that the planning commission is the board responsible for making tweaks to the zoning code.
So should we make a request of planning commission? Should our instruction here be to have the chair of our august body draft a letter that addresses these two problems and send it on to planning?
Don't do letters.
Oh, so should we instruct the two lawyers on our august body to draft watertight?
I think that Cameron has a running list of things to go to planning commission for relative to the zoning code. So I think we just add this to the bucket list.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I don't know why you can't take your own discretion on a single deeded property that
Okay.
has multiple lots and make a determination yourself as to whether it needs to come before this board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough?
Steve, are you comfortable with that?
I'm good with that, absolutely.
All right, the second issue then is where we measure setbacks. I'll say, Tamara, that a call to Paul LeBlanc
Okay.
is warranted because I know that we had discussion regarding where to measure our setbacks, and they are from the building and foundation.
Well,
We had
I mean, but Tamara's point remains, we may have had those conversations, but if it didn't translate into the language,
No,
who gives a
right.
damn?
Right, but-
So it would be nice to have it as a background, but ultimately, again, planning has to decide
Yes.
what language is gonna clarify the issue in the code as it stands.
But this would, I mean, you know, this would be considered legislative history, if you would, and if in fact it's not disputed, then it is something that you could take into consideration while we're waiting to get this thing ironed out.
Yeah, I mean, it's, what it does is it really forces the applicant to do another layer of work to really define through a drawing what that overhang, what that appendage is, and where it is in relation to the setback. It's not Tamara's responsibility to measure that and determine that based on a drawing. It's up to the applicant to measure that. And I know that when I do my drawings, I do not, under any circumstance, show my setbacks from anything but the body of the building. And haven't, in this verb, I haven't ever done it that way, any other way. In this, the Fisher
Get back and
application
pull
was
that
measured
file.
from the foundation. Well, it's because that's the way I interpreted it, but it,
But you do provide sections in your drawings?
Yeah, in details.
sometimes, if I need to know if I
Ted, I
see
think you're
something
gonna
or
dig
not.
yourself in deeper here.
No, there are times when I'll submit a zoning application before a client spends 6% of his budget on me to do drawings. I'll do a simple site plan, can I get this through zoning? And then move forward with the rest of it, because it's an iffy whether I can do it or not. And I can tell you that the chicken scratchings that we get are not construction documents that define what that final product is gonna look like. And so we're asking our applicants to provide more information, and 9 out of 10 times, they're gonna come in here with insufficient information, and we're gonna kick them back. And I just have a real problem with that. I don't know why we need to do that. So, I mean, that's just my own stance. Obviously, I'm pretty convicted by it, but, if it's the overhangs and that's what the code says, I've done that too. I mean, I got into a yelling match with somebody in Wayne Township about the gutter, because the code says the building and its structural appendages,
Oh, well, that.
and it goes into that.
Gutter, yeah.
And so he said, and I want you to know that that means the gutter too. And I said, you don't have the authority to make that decision. And I said, at what point in the gutter, if you want to go there? Is it the nail that's drives the gutter in, or is it the gutter base, or is it, if it's a coped gutter, what portion of that gutter? I said, who in the world do you think you are? I said, the only structural thing there is the fascia board. And he would not lay down. He said, if you don't like it, then take me to court. And I said, well, I just may do that.
That's how that's how Tip City was, and Tip City's Board of Zoning Appeals would make people remove parts of their building.
Well, okay, so you're going to take a look at the legislative history, you'll find out a little bit about this. Do we want to make a request of planning commission that they try to clarify this?
I'm gonna call the attorney and ask him about the history, right? And
How
I
do you
have
do
no
that? I don't
idea
know how
what the.
but do we want to make a request of planning commission that they clarify this issue?
I would like to make that request.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's critical.
So how do we do that?
Well, if you all want to request the planning commission review that particular issue, and then you request of me that I provide them with minutes, they're gonna look at everything that you deliberated in asking them to look at that issue. So it covers your.
Okay,
Sounds
let's
good.
do that.
Thank you.
It probably makes some sense, as you were saying, to, somewhere in that loop, to ask LeBlanc where he thinks it's covered in the code, not what he thinks was discussed, but where he thinks it's addressed in the code.
I think that
And if it's not adequately, then to ask our people to fix it.
I think Paul interpreted building face as building and the measurement of that from the building. And so, he said in the whole delivery, we can go into a whole lot of clarifications about the overhangs and all of the other things in this, but it would put a lot more stuff in this code, and we're trying to make it simple. So that's where this all came from. And that's why I don't think that it's in there.
It would have made
I
it
may
less
be
and more
completely
simple to have it
wrong.
in.
By the time it went through planning commission and council, God only knows what's left. But, and that's the way that the TRC certainly approached it.
So is
There's
there
nothing
anything else?
there's nothing that prohibits the planning commission from going to Paul LeBlanc.
Correct.
LeBlanc,
That's
is that
right.
Paul? Is that
Paul, that's right.
LeBlanc and going to him and I mean, that's entirely up to them if they want to do that. I'd like to think they will, but it's up to them when we, request this clarification, right? It's up to them how they go about clarifying it.
Yeah.
And that could be one way of going about it. but-
Yeah, that's well put.
Okay.
So any other business?
One other piece of business. I do not believe, since we met last, that stalwart Judy Kintner had welcomed the newest member of her family into the family, and I think we should all congratulate her on that.
We're not finalized.
Well,
but, yeah.
Oh, you're close enough.
and he's unbelievably cute, so that's,
Congratulations.
Yeah.
All right, Judy. So do you want to make the motion to adjourn then, since you're the...
Right, I don't know that I can, but I would certainly move to adjourn.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Exactly.
Well, that was good.